Welcome to Healing the Spirit, a space where we awaken our creativity, deepen our connections, and remember who we are through the lens of astrology, archetypes, and art making. I'm your host, Jonathan Coe. Hello everyone, welcome to Healing the Spirit and welcome to this episode. I will be sharing with you some of my contemplations and reflections and insights for the energy as well as the astrology of the coming week. But before we begin, I really want to encourage you to bring your awareness into your heart space and to co-create a space here with me where you can really listen and reflect back to yourself what your heart is sharing with you. And those of you who have been listening to these weekly contemplations for some time know that I'm always encouraging the listeners of these episodes to listen to their own information. But for this week, this invitation feels deeply important. It feels to me like this is a week where there are a lot of options. And for many of us, we will be invited into different rooms within our hearts. And it feels ultimately, in the long term, deeply nutritive to me if we say yes to some of the invitations that come up during this coming week. And also, the process of doing that may really be uncomfortable. I mean, this has been a running theme in the past few weeks. Those of you who have been listening know that the past few weeks have just not been the most comfortable. And I feel like this week, the theme unfortunately continues. At least this is how it's landing for me. Like, it feels really uncomfortable in my body. And so I'm just gonna say that at the forefront here, while also making space for the possibility that maybe your experience is very different than mine. Maybe this energy feels amazing for you. There's a lot of mutable energies in the coming week. I'm going to get into the details in a second. There's a lot of Venusian energy, which I think is deeply welcome as a change from the past few weeks where we have been in such a martial initiation with the astrology. And also, these are not necessarily easeful Venusian explorations. And so before I get further, let me just share a little bit about the astrology, just to kind of color the field, to give you a little bit of a sense. If you are tracking astrology and if you are fluent in astrology, this may really help you to just kind of anchor into what kind of week we have. So again, as I mentioned, this is the week of November 27, 2023. On Monday, the 27th, we have a full moon in Gemini where the sun will conjoin Mars and the full moon will square Saturn in Pisces. We also have Mercury in Sagittarius squaring Neptune in Pisces. On Wednesday, the 29th, Venus will conjoin the South Node in Libra. On Friday, December 1st, which is so crazy to think about that we're already in the last month of the year, we have Mercury entering Capricorn. On Saturday, the 2nd, Mercury in Capricorn will sextile Saturn in Pisces. And on Sunday, the 3rd, Venus in Libra will square Pluto in Capricorn. So immediately when I sensed into my body, both my physical as well as auric body, what I was sensing was this movement, almost this spiralic shape in front of my heart. And it really feels to me like there are a lot of opportunities for us to be healing the heart in this coming week, or at least to begin the process of healing the heart. And specifically, it feels like this process of healing the heart has to do with releasing templates of what we believe to be possible when it comes to matters of the heart. What we believe to be possible when it comes to communicating with other people, what it means that something is important to us and that something is close to our hearts. And as I mentioned before, there are a lot of options in terms of where we can go this coming week. To refer to the astrology, we have the full moon, where the sun is in Sagittarius and the moon is in Gemini. And to me, both Sagittarius and Gemini, by the way, are mutable signs, right? And to me, it feels like this energy is shifty. This energy is excited, maybe. There may be revelations that are coming up around the things that we know, the things that we don't know, and the things that we believe. And all of that is in a square to Saturn in Pisces, which has to do with themes around the dissolution and the redirection of what we allow our energies to flow into in our lives. Saturn in Pisces has felt to me like the energetic structures of our lives, right? The structures that maybe we don't fully see, unlike the structures of our jobs or the structures of our relationships or our bank account, right? But these are the structures in terms of what we care about and what we don't care about, as well as how our energies are impacted in general by the things that we do care about and the things that we don't. And with this full moon, I think there's illumination around ways of being that may be more authentic, that may be more exciting, that may be about us recovering and remembering our sense of curiosity. And curiosity has become such a popular concept in the past few years for good reasons, in my opinion. I think curiosity is absolutely beautiful. I think curiosity can lead us places that are previously inaccessible when we are too rigid with how we interact with the world and with our emotions. That being said, curiosity can also carry a certain amount of risk with it, right? This is, after all, a full moon where the sun is conjoined Mars. And there's something about Mars that has to do with taking risks, right? And so this full moon to me feels like the revelation of parts of ourselves that are authentic, ways of communicating that are authentic, but that may carry with it some charge, that may carry with it some fear, that may carry with it some challenges. And so, where does Venus come in? To me, Venus really comes into the conversation in terms of accessing these parts of us that want to deeply feel. See, Venus is in Libra, which is one of Venus's home. And so this is a domain where Venus has all the tools that she needs, or he needs, or they need, depending on your relationship and the pronouns that feel right for you for calling Venus, in order to be able to express their essential nature. That being said, Venus being conjoined the South Node and Venus squaring Pluto in Capricorn, these are not exactly, let's just say these are not roses and chocolates placements, right? This may be a placement that encourages some kind of challenging conversations to happen. It feels like a transit where we're invited to feel more deeply into the sensation of being alive, which includes pain, includes pleasure, or our hopes for pleasure that haven't been fully realized, which also includes disappointments. These are all things that, to me, are part of the Venusian realm. The Venusian realm has to do with deepening our connections with the senses, deepening our connections with the heart, and when we allow ourselves to feel more, the results are not always immediately beautiful. Again, not roses and chocolates. That as we allow ourselves to feel, often the first things we feel are the ways that are not completely pleasurable for us. And to me specifically, this Venus conjoining the South Node and Venus squaring Pluto has to do with having conversations around ways of relating, containers of relationships that are either completely not aligned and need to be adjusted in some shape or form, or has been aligned but is not going to be aligned for much longer because we are becoming more and more aware of the ways that we are growing, of the ways that we are wanting to, desiring a way of expressing ourselves that are more authentic, that are more coming from a sense of being able to respond on a moment-to-moment basis to these sensations that are coming up for us. And these conversations, even if in the long term they are beautiful, nourishing, supportive, in the moment of these conversations happening, they may be completely dysregulating. They may bring up all kinds of judgment or preconceived notion about how other people are not available to co-creating a structure, co-creating a relational container that feel nourishing to us. They may bring up stories of how in the past we have allowed ourselves to be vulnerable in front of a person we trust and have that vulnerability be met with an expression that we didn't expect, maybe coldness or maybe judgment or maybe even rejection. And to me, not disregarding these experiences, not disregarding these fears that may come up and these uncomfortable sensations that may come up, while simultaneously extending the grace, the possibility that the other person has also evolved and has shifted from their previous stance, may be really medicinal for many of us. Again, I am drawing this connection between the full moon in Gemini with the sun being in Sagittarius, with Venus in Libra, right? It is a sextile between the sun and Venus. And so giving ourselves permission to see others from the lens of giving them the benefit of a doubt, giving them the grace of maybe they're no longer the same person that had that reaction that I wasn't super happy about, right? That I wasn't really expecting in the past. That may be really helpful, especially if some of these conversations, some of these relational adjustments that feel important to bring up are things that have come up in the past that maybe haven't completely been resolved, right? And so it may be important here to take some time, if opportunities for these conversations are arising, to first and foremost really check in with the heart. Really check in with yourself and your needs and ask yourself, what do I need at this moment? Do I need to validate my experience? Is there a younger part of me that really just needs to be soothed by myself? Do I need to do a little bit of shadow work here, maybe around my motivation for even bringing up these conversations? Maybe there are, I wouldn't go as far as saying ulterior motives, but maybe there are hidden motives or motivations that I'm not seeing that are driving my desire to have these conversations and to have these shifts. Or maybe from your heart space, you realize that I just need to have a little bit more compassion with this person, and I need to express my needs without making them necessarily feel that they need to be the one who fulfill those needs. Because sometimes it's not available within that relationship. All of us are deeply complex beings, and sometimes we have needs that we want or we crave to be fulfilled by one person or by one relationship or by one situation. And sometimes that situation, that person, that relationship is just not able to give that to us. And so to me, this is providing opportunities for redirection, right? It doesn't always mean that that relationship, that person, that opportunity is not right for you. But part of, I think, adjusting and allowing yourself to be available to that relationship may require you to get very clear and very honest about the nature of these needs, right? And then to begin identifying resources where you can get the needs met. So let me get a little bit more practical here. Perhaps you want a certain kind of closeness that a friend is not able to give or is not able to give at this moment. It is very human, very natural to feel disappointed because there's a part of you that may be deeply invested in this person that wishes that you can relate a certain way. And also at the same time, we can't force others to transform for us, right? That's not fair. That's not healthy. And so often, one of the ways that we can deal with this is to bring it up with them as part of radical honesty practice. Let them sit with that information, however they need to sit with that information. And in the meantime, give ourselves validation that these needs are deeply important, that these needs deserve to be met, that they deserve to be fulfilled. And then to get maybe creative, right, about the agency that we have around fulfilling these needs. That sometimes maybe the answer is that you need to find another friend whom you can share these kinds of experiences with. Or maybe you need to co-regulate with nature. Or maybe you need to treat yourself to a massage. Whatever it is, right? Sitting with this need is always potent, is always powerful, and deeply clarifying And I think this is kind of this experience of Venus in Libra, right? Because one thing that's important to feel into with Venus in Libra is to think about Libra as this place where we ultimately aim for balance and harmony. To me, balance and harmony are such interesting concepts because, for example, when we think about balance, let's use the example of a scale, right? In order for a scale that has two sides to be balanced, both sides need to be weighed equally. Both sides have to have equal pressure on top of them, creating this perpetual infinity loop of tension in order for that balance to be preserved, right? A scale can't be balanced when one side is heavier than the other. Both sides have to have the same weight. And so, in a sense, to me, balance has to do with disconnecting, stepping out of the concept of winning and losing. In order to really achieve balance, there needs to be some level of constant tension, right? That it's not about winning or losing, but that the goal here, if the goal is balance, is to continue to challenge one another perpetually so that there's equal weight, right? That both sides can be seen, both sides can be held. And the other side of this, which is harmony, is another interesting concept because it's easy to believe that in order for harmony to be achieved, we need to be in agreement all the time. This could not be further from the truth, right? Because, for example, if you think about the concept of harmony in music, harmony in music is literally when more than one note is being played, right? And in order to have harmony, you have to have two different notes or more. And so harmony actually cannot be achieved through sameness. Harmony can only be achieved when we have difference. And that difference creates or is in relationship with one another in a way that is supportive. That's what harmony is, right? And so, going back to Venus in Libra, to me, Venus in Libra has to do with not necessarily finding a solution or solving a problem, but rather to allow different perspectives to coexist, allow them to be expressed artfully, and for some sort of balancing to start happening as a result of these different perspectives and these different needs being expressed. And this is hard, right? When we think about the way our world is at the moment, a lot of the challenges that we experience, a lot of the problems, let's say, or suffering that we experience, they're so rooted in the inability to hold ourselves in that energy of tension, right? Of perpetual tension without one side feeling like they need to dominate the other. And in order for this perpetual tension to start getting alchemized, it requires time. It requires patience. And it requires a certain level of enjoyment, taking pleasure in the act of balancing and the perpetual tension in and of itself. It can almost feel maddening to the part of us that wants to win, to be in this perpetual tension, right? But sometimes, in order for the alchemy to happen, both sides need to stay true to their essential color, essential qualities, until a process of dissolution begins to happen, right? That dissolution actually happens from kind of sustained heat, right? And so, what are some of the ways that maybe we can bring this down into our incarnate lived experience? Something I'm thinking about here is the ways that certain kinds of conversations, certain desires for relational adjustments need to be brought up a number of times before each side are even, before all the sides are even on the same page. That it may be truly beneficial to bring a conversation up and allow the first time to be almost like the exposition, right? And then to give it some time to allow the energetic thing to just kind of swirl around, to do its job, and then to come back to this conversation at a later time and to check in again, and to not be in a space of trying to dominate, and rather to be in a space where we can just have an open conversation, where feelings can be explored, where sensations can exist and can be present in the room, right? Where we can be in this push and pull without feeling like we need to shut off the other side or collapse ourselves in service to the other side. With Mercury moving into Capricorn, to me, this also feels like some of these conversations will be oriented towards the logistics of things. Mercury in Capricorn is Mercury that understands on a deep level that words have gravity. Words are spells. Words are powerful. And that if we don't treat words as the powerful frequency attunement tools or tuning fork that they really are, is a disservice to everyone, right? And so this is also an invitation to choose your words carefully. And by that, I don't mean be perfectionistic about it, but rather to allow your words to come from this deep place within your heart. To give yourself a chance to really feel into what you want to communicate with this person from the heart space first, and then to allow words to come out of it. As a side note, sometimes words don't come out. Sometimes there are no words to express what it is that we are feeling in our heart space. And in these situations, are we able to step into the discomfort of saying, I'm not really sure how to verbalize this, but I know how it feels in my heart. Can I maybe just hug you? Or can we maybe just sit in silence? Can we maybe just look at an artwork together or look at a lake together and allow the magic of our presence with one another do the work? It's easy when we grow up in very verbal cultures, such as the culture of the United States, where I'm currently living, to believe that words are everything. To believe that in order to resolve a particular relational impasse that we're on, or to move on to the next stage, we need to use words. But this to me could not be further from the truth. The reality is that words are simply ways to anchor, ways of being, ways of relating that are already present in our energetic field and the energetic field of the relationship, right? Words are only really truly meant for confirming or for recognizing the subtle nuances that maybe if we just kind of feel with the heart, we're not always communicating, but to believe that the only communication that is valid is through words, to me is very limiting. That if we allow ourselves to be open to other ways of communicating, we may find that there's a deeper wealth, a more accessible, maybe even abundant flow of energetic support that we can express through and with one another. So the last thing I will say is about the full moon. So as I mentioned, the full moon feels slightly tense to me. It feels like there's a lot of inherent instability for this particular full moon. It can be deeply illuminating. And also the challenge with this particular full moon is that it may be easier for us to conceptualize our experiences, our feelings, rather than to allow our bodies to feel more deeply what the heck is actually going on. This full moon feels potent because it illuminates how shifts in the ways that we think, that we process information, that we formulate our beliefs, all of which are Gemini Sagittarian themes, can necessitate or propel shifts in how we structure our lives and our relationships and the flow of our energies, which is the theme of Saturn in Pisces. Likewise, we may also come into an awareness of the limitations of the current structures that we have and that we have been practicing on our ability to perceive, our ability to understand, and our ability to gather information. And so this kind of goes both ways, right? We may be challenged to look at our belief systems and then to shift the structure, or we may be so aware of the limitation of the structure, which then asks us to investigate the beliefs that contribute to the creation of those structures. And it may really show us which structures in our lives used to work really well, but are now devoid of flow and nourishment. Which structures in our lives once felt inspiring and full of imagination and possibilities, but now just feels like a chore. Coming into the awareness of the lifelessness of these structures can bring up a lot. It can bring us a sense of relief. We may feel like the burden is finally lifted from our shoulders, but it can also bring up fear. It can bring up uncertainty. It can bring up anxiety. It may put us into this liminal space of, okay, I know I need to let go of this, or at least some aspects of this. And yet, I'm still not sure what the alternative would look like. So if this is what's coming up for you, my invitation is to direct you to episode 103 in this podcast, which is a conversation that I had with astrologer and wise woman Britton LaRue on the emergent no, which is a framework that she coined. And I feel like this will be a really helpful resource for this coming week because some things may be crumbling. And sometimes when things are crumbling, it is not entirely clear if what's crumbling is the thing itself or the way that we're relating to the thing. And Britton and I talked quite extensively about this and about what it means to sit with that discomfort as we navigate changes, as we navigate adjustments, right? And again, as I mentioned, the Venus in Libra story here is not about running away from the potential adjustment and or the discomfort. It's not about trying to dominate or manipulate, and it's not about collapsing either. It's about staying in this uncomfortable knot, right? That is a braiding of our needs and the needs of the other person and what is required in the situation right now. The past that we've shared together, it's complex, right? These are not easy things to navigate. But I think as we allow ourselves to feel into what it means to listen to this part of us that's saying, we can't do this anymore, it may really bring us wisdom. It may really allow us to cultivate ways of being with ourselves that are more compassionate, that are kinder, and that ultimately impacts the way that we relate to one another. So here's a final consideration I would like to offer to you. Full disclosure, this week's contemplation has taken me a number of times to record until I feel like I finally know what this energy is even about, which I wouldn't say never happened to me, but very rarely has it happened to the extent where I feel the need to share that with all of you. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because it feels important to me. It feels like we're working with energies that feel a little bit circuitous, energies that feel a little bit slippery, and energies that may kind of invite us into a more chatty mental space when actually what's required is deeper tending of the heart. And so the reason why I want to share that with you is because it may be the case that the process you're moving through this week, as I mentioned in the beginning when I was experiencing that spiral, that experience may feel like a spiral. That experience may feel like a lack of clarity for a while until you are able to finally relax into, on a bodily level, relax into what is truly coming up. The process of looking at our own needs and becoming clearer and more honest with the needs of our bodies, of our hearts, of our spirit, this is not easy. So many of us are taught to not look at that. So many of us are taught to downright ignore or set that aside. And so the process of sitting with it may be really, really challenging. So if that's your experience, I want to encourage you to not lose faith and to not lose stamina. One thing that can be really helpful if you are feeling so down on yourself and you feel this immense lack of clarity is actually to take a break. This seems so simple, but take a bath. Give your body space so that it can really deepen and be with the sensations that are coming up. And something I've been telling my students about this process of feeling into the body is that it can feel like not a success when we allow ourselves to deepen into the body because we are so used to processing through the mind, right? So this actually happened to me when I came from more of a background of meditation, and specifically meditation that induces kind of clairvoyant information to come through. And so I'm used to experiencing visions. I'm used to experiencing intuitive hits, right? That almost play out like a movie right in front of me that I'm accessing through my third eye. But as I deepen into more of my body, more of my sensations, sometimes the sensations feel so mysterious. It feels like literally it feels like that sound, like it just feels like, what is all of this coming up? There's nowhere for me to anchor into. I can't turn this into a story or a novel, right? And that can feel hard to work with because our minds love stories, right? But my invitation is for you to give yourself as much as you can space and the opportunity to really relax into the sensations and to allow the sensations to come in the order that they want to come in the ways that they want to come, and to let the natural process unfold. Similarly with relational processes, right? That sometimes relational processes are happening within the time frame that you predicted, and most of the time they don't. And it doesn't mean that the relationship is necessarily doomed, right? What is that timeline anyway in the grander scheme of the journey of our spirits and our souls? All right. That's all I have to share with you. I hope that some of these insights and reflections are helpful as you navigate the coming week. I am wishing you ease. I'm wishing you an orientation towards prioritizing your pleasure as you do this work, and give yourself a hug and give yourself encouragement as you move through this week. Allow whatever to come up that wants to come up to be witnessed with care, with gentleness, and in kinship. Thank you so much for co-creating this space with me, for contemplating the coming week, and I'm sending you so much love. Take care.